All right, everybody. Should be live now. Let's see. Hopefully they're refreshing and checking things out. All right. So, are we ready to get this going, or should we just wait a little bit longer for everybody?
Uh, up to you. I think we can go ahead and dive right in, give people the background of what we're actually going to be discussing as although they can probably kind of guess from what is visible on screen at this point.
Yeah. Um. So again, I don't know if this is the right video, but I trying to find it on last minute flight. But Stephen A. Smith does have a track record of saying things that get people fired up because he goes for the shock jock value. And what will spin up more white people than him saying that him a black guy beating up a white guy in a football field is due to racism or racial tendencies. So let's give it a listen here.
It's unfortunate. Miles Garrett has to be suspended for the rest of the season. Can't see him again. This is what you don't consider this a football issue. It's an even though it was on the field, it's a non-football issue. I'm not going to go as far as to say it was a criminal act, like I saw Damian Woody saying on national television last.
So yeah, just a little clarification. Mason Rudolph's agent was saying that they were considering after the game was saying they were considering going with criminal charges. Mason has since come out and said, "No, I'm not going to do that." So just so people are clear on that, there
Yeah,
was
it was something that was thought about and explored because there would be a case for it, and there actually is a precedent for it. Actually, going back to 2012, I think it was, when a Boston Bruins player checked a Montreal Canadian player into the boards, causing a severe neck injury. And a number of people called for criminal proceedings to be pursued. And the Canadian Royal Mounted Police actually did begin an investigation
mm,
into it. Ultimately, no charges came from it, but there is precedence of something happening in game in a professional sporting event that can have legal ramifications off the field.
yep. That's that. There's also correlations to Albert Hainsworth in 2006 2007 time frame where he stepped on people with his cleats. So yeah,
And Dominican Sue doing the same thing.
yeah, he needs to adjust his collar. Yeah, that collar does look kind of wonk with that white zip up underneath. Don't you agree?
Yeah, he needs to fire his stylist.
Yeah,
Like, I don't think that the law enforcement official should get involved and suddenly he should be arrested on assault charges. But I do believe that when you're the National Football League, safety is an issue, decorum is an issue, behavior is an issue. All of these things come into play. Understand that Troy Vincent in his office is going to write a letter. Jan Runyon is going to hand out the punishment. God.
the guy over here looks like he's afraid of what Steven's gonna say.
Yeah, it's one of those. Oh boy,
I
I know you a crazy one. Let's see where you're going to go with this because so far I agree with you, but where are you going to go off the rails? It's not a question of if; it's a question of when.
exactly.
Guys like Derek Brooks and James Thrash, because you know that somebody's going to file an appeal. It doesn't matter. Miles Garrett is not going to be seen again this season on the football field. I predict that he's going to be suspended for the rest of the year. I think that there's going to be a suspension that comes down to Pouncey. My initial reaction is he lost it in the moment that he saw Miles Garrett, hit his quarterback with his own helmet. But when you think about it, okay, considering the letter of the law, whatever, you know a suspension is going to come his way. There's going to be a host of people that's going to be fined because there is a rule in the National Football League. Just like in the NBA, you can't come onto the court from the bench. You can't come onto the field from the sideline. So there's going to...
I haven't gone back and looked at that yet, but it's interesting to see the fine hasn't been announced yet for Rudolph, but that's all he got. Pouncey is supposedly getting a 3-game suspension, and the other Browns player that was booted off the field at the time of the game, he's getting a 1-game suspension is the last I heard on that. So LRJ88, he's mildly constipated.
be multiple fines handed down. I believe there's going to be at least 2 suspensions, that on Garrett, that on Pouncey. Mason Rudolph wasn't innocent in all of this in a lot of people's eyes. They view him as being an instigator. I don't go that far as to say that you're a quarterback, you're getting beat up all night long. Garrett was all over Mason Rudolph all night long. You know, you're battling with offensive linemen trying to protect Mason Rudolph, but you were hitting the quarterback. And then with 8 seconds left, you take him. He clearly has gotten rid of the ball. Not only do you put him down, you was going to get penalized at that moment anyway, because you literally drove your body into him to drive him into the ground, which is a penalty in and of itself, which is why Mason Rudolph acted the way that he acted, because he's like, it's 8 seconds left. The game is clearly over. Y'all up 14, and you still doing this to me? That's what that was about, but you know that there's going to be repercussions in that regard. No way around it. But in terms of my...
So it doesn't look like this is the clip that I'm looking for, but we'll keep playing it.
Yeah, it is getting the framework out there of what actually the situation around the fight. Which, when I heard that it happened, my initial question was, "Wait, they did what?"
Oh, I was
Why?
watching it.
Yeah, I don't watch NFL all that much anymore. And honestly, things like this are part of the reason why. It's, again, I understand the battle mentality that a lot of football players play with, that edge that they go with, that aggressiveness that they bring to the table. But at the same time, there is enough there for you to show restraint. They've actually been shown, it's been shown that NFL players, when the whole thing about late hits was addressed, and some of them tried to say that, oh, we're playing the game so quick, we can't tell if it's a late hit or not. Bull.
There's bull to that, yeah. Now, there are some times where I think the NFL, in erring the side of safety, forgets that there's this little thing called physics in the way. But, you know, I mean, I get it. I just don't agree with it entirely all the time. Like there should be some room for leniency, like bang bang plays, and you're flagging somebody because somebody actually moved or changed their position in the last second, and there's no way for the other person to react to that.
Like certain helmet to helmet hits?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of those situations actually came up for the Steelers Thursday night too. What's his name? Juju Schuster-Smith just got clobbered at the same time that Rudolph got clobbered in the backfield for a penalty. They called it roughing the passer. Mm-hmm. And Schuster got hit both sides in his head, and he just got a concussion from it. I mean, that which personal foul penalty do you call? Because they're both 15 yards and an automatic first. You know what I mean?
So. I mean, technically, couldn't you call them both?
No, you only get one penalty, because the other one is basically, you could call them both, but one penalty is applied, the other one is not. So, because if you compound penalties, eventually you're getting to the point where you're basically giving up, half a field or more in a penalty situation.
Really a problem though. As penalty, it's supposed to hurt. So if you're getting multiple fractions on a single play, why not make it really hurt and get the point across that there's a way to play within the rules and still do this appropriately if you're going to go beyond rules in a way that is deemed to be
You're roboting
to
pretty bad on my end here, man.
turn everything off.
Yeah, all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you started roboting really bad there.
But now,
Much better.
okay.
But I
Literally
got the
just
gist of
a
what you're
moment.
saying. So
Yeah, it's one of those. If it's going to be a penalty that is the other than the spot foul of a pass interference, your personal fouls are the top tier penalty during gameplay of football. So if multiple are committed in one play, why not enforce all of them and really drive the point home?
I I understand where you're going with it, but at the same time, I also see where the NFL does it, because then the fans are already pissed off that the rule book is, like this thick already. If you were to compound the penalties, the fans would start griping about that, and they're going to already start losing the viewership they've been losing, because they can't keep fans in the stands much anymore, because everybody's got the Direct TV Sunday package, or they got Comcast version of it, Game Pass or whatever, in Red Zone. So
True, and they do have an issue with consistent enforcement of the rule book on top of it.
well, they've
Yeah,
actually been getting better about it, but yeah, there is that. So let's move on. Let's see if we get the blow up that I'm hoping we get. I hope if I
Garrett,
actually
it's
click on the right
unfortunate,
screen.
But penalized first game of the season, second game of the season against the Jets, multiple late hits, including breaking Trevor Simeon's leg. You got to take all of that into consideration. But then for this to be on national television, the league office, just knowing, I haven't spoken to them, but I've known Troy Vincent for many years. I covered him when he was a Philadelphia Eagle. I was a Philadelphia Inquirer. And I'm telling you right now, the fact that it was on national TV, that is something that's beyond a football play. This is going to resonate with him so profoundly. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to go
Still
more
got that
than
look on
just
his
the
face.
rest of this season.
I think that's reasonable, because we just mentioned that Vontaze Burfict got suspended 12 games. And again, he has a much lengthier and dirtier history than Garrett does. But to sort of randomly choose 6 games because there were 6 games left in the season might not be the way to do this. Here's the thought I had as Steve was talking. This was a standalone game last night. I mentioned Good Morning America had this in the lead block of their broadcast this morning. There are probably people watching us right now that don't normally watch a lot of ESPN because they're interested in this. As a football player, do you feel like that?
Oh, ain't
I'm
that
one
the
of
truth? Ain't that the truth, Greenberg? Ain't that the truth? He got tired of being in Golick's shadow, I think. That's why Golick does the show by himself and one other new guy. Because it's been a couple years now, but that shows you how much I watch and listen to ESPN.
Bothers you. I've gotten that sense from you guys this morning that there is going to be a painting with
What
a
you
broad
talking about,
brush
Willis?
about the league and about the players in it based on this that does not sit well with you.
Sure. Look, naturally, people are inclined to have stereotypical thoughts about athletes and about football players in particular because of the nature of the game, the physicality of the game, the background of many of the players who use sports as a way to really bring themselves up out of poverty and make something of themselves. So when this happens, there's a faction of people who don't really follow sports who are going to look at this and go, see, that's how they are.
This is what's setting it up. He's setting him up for it.
But at the same point, where he's coming from in this premise is not incorrect. There is a group of people out there who do hold that position and do get vocal when things like this happen. That is not to say that they are right. That is not to say that I agree with it. That is simply to say, yeah, I've seen and heard it. It is a thing, and
Well,
I don't agree with it.
Yeah, the thing is that there are players who, like, just for example, Richard Sherman grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood. He elevated himself up to a star status with the Seahawks and moved basically back to the general area where he's from. But he didn't play dirty. He didn't play negative. So he's not frowned upon as much as, say, somebody who grows up in the hood, had to fight his way out to get out of there, and then that's the mentality they carry through their football career, and don't know when to turn it off. And that's where I see he's going with his line of reasoning here. That this is where people see it, is that people assume that these players, especially the ones that come out of certain areas, are just thugs, which they're not entirely right, but they're not entirely wrong either, because there is a certain mentality to that lifestyle in those areas that you have to survive.
The origin came from somewhere, but to hold it as a detrimental stereotype and to project it on everyone regardless of their individuality, that's where it goes wrong. Just because some people have been like that and may still be in that way does not mean the entirety of them are in that mold.
Exactly. So moving on.
They have no when the going gets tough. This is what they resort to. So you're right. So personally, you start to take it personal. You start to worry about how this affects the reputation of everyone else in the fraternity too. And it's not representative of how people really are. I understand that you can get outside of yourself and have those moments, but they have to be punished. But you're right. Now, and the league is aware of that too now. They don't want the perception of their game being that we have a bunch of uncontrollable young players out here who are just testosterone-ridden guys who are, unpredictable. They don't want that, we don't want that.
Louis Riddick is 1,000% right, and I'm going to still take it to another level. You're judged differently as a black man. The fact of the matter is, in the post-game conference, you had players and you had Coach Freddie Kitchens being asked, has he had any anger management issues? Okay, these are the kind of things that happen. And why is that relevant, Greeny? Lewis, he can speak to this. Troy Vance is a black man. Make no mistake about it, this man, that's going to resonate with him because how you're perceived when you hear me going off on First Take because somebody has found themselves in a particular situation, it's because I recognize the fact that as a black man, we're going to be judged from a societal perspective just a touch differently. Richie Incognito, he acts up. That's an isolated incident. You're talking about him, but somehow, some way, when something happens with the...
You want to say something?
And I was thinking of the Richie Incognito issue because that whole thing of it's not just a black man issue because... okay, for every Richie Incognito out there, there's an Indomitian Sue. Two of arguably the most dirty players on each side of the ball in the NFL in recent memory. Here's the problem you're dealing with, Stephen A. The league, the NFL, the players are far and away majoritarily African American descent. So yes, you are going to have more of a negative light in that aspect when the majority of your league's demographic are of that ethnicity, and then you have these instances where individuals behave in that mode. Again, I don't agree with the criticism, but again, you have to look at where it's coming from. And rather than be rational and recognize, yes, this looks bad because on the league in general, yes, it looks bad from a racial standpoint on the outside looking in, but what can we legitimately expect when individuals act like this? And if I remember correctly, it's something like 80%, or if not close to 90% of the league are of African American descent.
Yeah, it's a large proportion. And here's the thing. If you really want to make this about a racial demographic, if it were really as bad as he's trying to make it out to be, Rudolph wouldn't have even been fined.
Yeah.
If there was truly this issue in society that he's trying to play up, is there certain unfortunate media biases against African American men and women when it comes to anger issues like this? Yes, there is. Ooh, that was Facebook. Hopefully, it's not my co-host being mad at me. Nope. Okay. But the point of it is, no matter who's doing the violent acts like this in a game, it cannot be tolerated, and it has to be put down. Should if the roles were reversed, should they have asked if Rudolph had anger management issues before to coach? God, what's his name over at the Steelers? I cannot remember it.
Kitchens?
No, Kitchens is Cleveland.
Ah.
Um, why can I not think of his name? I just
Oh, Tomlin's still
yeah,
there,
Tomlinson, yeah. Yeah. Tomlin. It's Tomlin. That's what it is. Mike Tomlin. I would think that they would still ask the same question of Tomlin about Rudolph. Do I think that Rudolph should be getting just a fine? No, I think he should be suspended just as long as Garrett. But the problem is you have to look at what is the response, and he set it up. Stephen A. Smith set it up very eloquently. Garrett was abusing Rudolph all night. He was abusing the offensive line to abuse Rudolph. And Rudolph just had enough of it and started pushing back and just, like, dude, get off me. There's 8 seconds left to go. You don't have to be doing this. Garrett, and I'm wondering.
Especially because Garrett was going to be getting a roughing the passer penalty on that play no matter what.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I don't think that the pushing was what instigated Miles. I'm thinking Rudolph said something to him as they were coming down on the ground. And that's what's
right after.
Yeah. Because there is no way that if I'm a defensive player, I'm going to try and pull your helmet off for you just being a little, for lack of a better word here, bitch, when it comes to me tackling you at the end of a game. Now, granted, it was going to be a roughing the passer penalty because you can clearly see he's being driven into the ground long after the ball had been thrown. So, but let's see what Steven has to say.
Black athlete, sometimes generically, those things come into play. A black man, anger management issues, things of that nature. Troy Vance is going to be sensitive to that. Derek Brooks is going to be sensitive to that. John Runyon doesn't need to be sensitive to that, but because he's a white guy, but in the same breath, he's going to protect the shield. So Lewis is right. All of those things come into play, but I'm going to take it to another level because I know Troy Vincent, and I'm telling you right now, that kind of stuff is going to resonate with him. This is not going to be a good day for Myles Garrett. I can promise you that.
So that's that clip. I mean, what else can you say to that, really?
Yeah, I understand where he's coming from because of the backlash that is going to happen because of, again, the ignorant minority speaking out and actually going with trying to push that sort of narrative. And in my opinion, the easiest way to deal with a voice like that at this point is to ignore them. Starve them of attention. Do things the right way. Move forward with the appropriate action and keep your nose clean going forward as the league, as the team, even as the coaching staff and everything else. And I will even say that it would be a good opportunity later during this upcoming week, not right away, to give it a few days for the representation, be it the agent or through a prepared statement or even a press conference with Myles Garrett, to just clear the air, do a bit of a mea culpa that, yes, what I did was excessive due to the heated nature of the game and everything. That does not excuse my behavior. and just provide that light, provide that sense of ownership and recognition of where he himself went wrong in
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah. This is the
And
aftermath where the two teams are clearing the bench. Let's see if I can. One thing I hate about this is you can't scrub it like you can on YouTube very well. So
yeah,
here we go. So watch it right here, and
uh,
I believe he's right here. Miles Garrett's right there.
I'm not seeing it internally.
Yeah, because I forgot to share it to you. So sue me. So here's Rudolph. I believe this is Garrett right here, based on
Yep.
the start there.
Oh, clear shot to the quarterback, and yeah,
You got to you. There's something had to have been said there.
yeah. Even if it was from Rudolph saying, "Get the f off of me," and something tagged on to the end of that,
I'm thinking it's something
I
tagged on that hit personally, like your mom, your girlfriend, or something like that, your wife, type of
yeah,
comment,
a very pointed, um,
insult.
unnecessary barb on top of the "get the
Here,
off of me." Yeah, because with around there,
yeah.
and also Rudolph putting his own hands around the head of
Well,
Garrett.
one of the initial things is you could see his arm was caught there actually in the face mask. Look, You can you can see how his arm is caught down here in the face mask area.
Yep.
So
Yeah, but the other hand to the back of the head is
yeah,
uh,
this is just bad for, and not just football but sports in general, in
yeah.
my opinion. Because honestly, when it comes to sports, these guys are supposed to be, and this is quotations here, role models for young children to show that hey, you can get out of a bad neighborhood. Hey, if you apply yourself, you can make this level of gameplay your job, your profession. But at the same time, this makes everybody look bad, and I'm not even going to say just Garrett look bad or make Pouncey look bad. It's making everybody, every single player there, look horrible. So, but Stephen A's point, yes, there are some issues with society still, you know, stereotyping people, not just black people, white people. I mean, if you're a white person that goes to a NASCAR race, what are you more likely considered to be?
Redneck hick.
Hillbilly, something like that.
Yeah.
Slack-jawed yokel, uneducated, all that. I mean, one of the running jokes when Jeff Gordon was the big name in NASCAR is the reason why NASCAR fans hate Jeff Gordon is because he enunciates.
Oh, I remember though.
Good old
I
Jeff
remember that
Foxworthy.
time. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, is that not could that not be used by any other minority group as a racial slur against white people who are fans of NASCAR or the white drivers of NASCAR?
hmm
I mean, hell, you have Juan Julio Montoya or something like that. I can't remember the actual Juan. One
Pablo
of
Montoya, I believe.
Yeah, Pablo Montoya. One of those Formula One drivers came over to Indy and then came over to NASCAR. That shows that that shows that there's beginning to get more people interested into that sport. You have, if you look at world football, who predominantly makes up that sport? Mostly the Latin American countries as well as some of the European countries. In the predominant leagues of the sport, English Premier League, the major European leagues. The World Cup is almost always dominated by either a European or a Latin American team.
Yeah,
except for women's.
well, and then look at the NHL and the top tier hockey leagues. It's Russians, Scandinavians, Canadians, and Americans.
Yep. So I mean, this is one of those topics that is race shouldn't ever be an issue with this at all. It should be the act of the players, and classifying the players as all one group. This is bad for the sport. You're all idiots, and you need to be punished for it. Although Mike Pouncey does have a wicked right cross here. not to condone such actions, but you have to admire a good right cross there. But that's pretty much all I want to talk about it is that Stephen A. Smith just doesn't really know what he's talking about, I don't think, in this case.
Well, at the same time, from my vantage point, being more on the fringes, looking in and taking a look at it that way, Stephen A. is a hyperbole pro. He will take instances like this and take a slight opening like was given to him there in that block of programming and run with it just for the shock factor, just for the wait a minute, he said what?
He's ESPN's version of Howard Stern to an extent. Yeah. Because it's not just football he covers. He covers basketball and a host of other sports, baseball as well. So, I mean, and there's another sport that's predominantly other than white, dominated. So, I mean,
Yeah.
And again, that should have nothing to do with it at all. That should not be the forefront of your mind when talking about a sport, period.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I heard about the brawl at the end of the game, my first thought of wait a minute, wait, what happened? Then I saw the replays, and not once did the ethnicity of the people involved ever come to play in my mind. It was simply, wait a minute, why is just that? Why are you reacting that way to that type of play? Both at the start of it, where Garrett, you crossed the line just from a player safety standpoint of doing something that you knew was going to get you flagged. Wrong one. Wrong two. Rudolph, I understand you've been beat up all game, but bite your freaking tongue, you dolt.
Well, just to show you this, I didn't see this on the in real time during the replays or anything. You can just see Garrett is seeing red there. So and again, I'm not trying to defend him in his reaction to this, but look at his eyes. You can just see he is.
Oh, he's locked in.
He is just tunnel vision red right there. So Rudolph had to have said or done something besides that pushing of his head. Something was said. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So,
and that's where Garrett, you had a share in what led to what happened. Rudolph, you too jack off. And I think my honest opinion is the only reason why Rudolph did not get a suspension himself is the fact that the league does not want to completely kill what's left of the season for one of its flagship franchises.
yeah.
Because as we mentioned before, of who else do the Steelers have on their depth chart as a quarterback?
Yeah. And
Roethlisberger's still out. That's why Rudolph was in there to begin with.
Yeah, Roethlisberger's out for the rest of the season. Rudolph, for the most part, has been a pretty composed guy, and like I said, there's only so many times you can take a beating in a game like that before it's before you're actually just
you hit a breaking point.
Yeah. Let's see how many times he actually was sacked here. Because the frustration shouldn't be on Garrett for sacking him. Frustration should be there for whooping his ass like that, but um, let's see. We want Browns, and we want defense. 1, 2, 3, 4 sacks. With, and of course, because it was penalized, they didn't give one to Garrett, so that would have been number 5. Had it been a legal sack, But I just getting there and beating up the passer the whole game. That takes a toll on your mentality. So, I mean, what else can we say? I mean, we've kind of covered everything, but it's just
taking a look at their depth chart right now. They're right now their depth chart beyond Rudolph. Delvin Hodges actually does have some game time experience, some game experience this year as a rookie.
well, yeah, because there was Rudolph was out with like a concussion, I believe.
Right, weeks 5 and 6,
Yeah.
Ravens against the Ravens and against the Chargers. So,
and Paxton Lynch has some experience too. I didn't realize he was on their team.
yeah, so I just noticed, and it's one of those things. But all at the same time, Lynch hasn't been on the field in an NFL game since 2017 with the Broncos.
Yeah, well, he was drafted by them, and then they cut him after a couple of years. So, but
So, maybe the NFL needs to go back and rethink just a fine for Rudolph. Like, here's the thing, a 1 or 2 game suspension on him, yeah, it'll hurt the Steelers, but at the same time, it'll send a message. And I think it will send the appropriate message, not just to the Steelers and not just to the players directly affected, but to the entire league and to everyone watching.
yeah, I mean, I can see the point of bias against quarterbacks in general, because quarterbacks do get preferential treatment, especially when it comes to safety issues. It's almost you need to just put flags on the quarterback and everybody else is full go tackle. You know what I mean?
They're not far away from that.
I know
And
they're
that's
not,
sad.
but the retaliation, the fact that once Garrett got his helmet off of him, and Rudolph was on the ground, Rudolph should have stayed there. He should have just stayed there. He probably wouldn't get fined, or if he would, it'd be a very minimal fine. Right now, I'm sure the league office is trying to assess how much of a fine they're going to give him. Like, here's the full book that we could throw at him, and then somewhere between half and that, is where I'm thinking they're going. But if he had just sat down and just stayed there, it probably would have just been a slap on the wrist penalty or a fine for him. I really think they should go back and assess his assess a suspension for him, even if it's just 2 games. Something for his instigation into that, and then also the subsequent following on. When at what point do you stop being protected as a player when you lose your helmet and you rush after the person who took your helmet? You're obviously at that point accepting some sort of risk, whether you're consciously aware of it or not.
Yeah, you are at that point a willing participant, not a true full-on victim of the situation.
So how much you want to bet this live stream gets flagged for copyright from either the ESPN or the NFL?
Just if it does, which I'd say right now 50-50, but I'd say if it does, I would counter with no, we were providing commentary. It was true and full-on fair use.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, I'm not worried about it. It's just, I just think it's funny because it'll be one of those, oh, we're not going to copyright strike you, but we're going to make a claim on it because you were playing our stuff. And it's like, you know what? Whatever. And I'll be sure to put the link in the channel and everything in the description when it updates.
Source material. Yeah.
So.
All right.
All right. Well, I think that's it, guys. Have a good one, because I have not seen anybody updated in the chat since LRJ 88's comment of it's China trying to stop any critique, which I wouldn't put it past them actually, and that was a half an hour ago. So according to everything I'm seeing, I'm still streaming. So.
Yep.
All right, everybody. You take care. Have fun, and I'll consider putting this up on my main channel.